And with that, we'll move on to our picks of the week. So, as always, we'll be choosing something that we think you people might enjoy. So, it could be a movie, a TV show, a book, a board game, something that we've been getting on with and we think other people might enjoy as well. So, with that said, Scott Zombie, what is your pick of the week?
Oh, I forgot. Yep. Dead I Am the One, exterminating sun, slipping through the trees and strangling the breeze. These lyrics are bad. I've never looked at the lyrics for this song. Anyway, the 90s, am I right? Or something, I don't even know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, since it's still Spooktober, been watching a lot of Giant Bomb series 6 Crazy Frights. Sorry. Which is something that their hosts Abby and Vinny do. Normally Abby plays through spooky games while Vinny is in the booth messing with sound and stuff, but since it's COVID times now, they have been doing online co-op spooky games. Normally it's Abby in either VR or something like... They started the whole series 3 years ago playing PT in VR, but have gone on and done some other stuff. Some not so great games, some pretty funny experiences, a lot of Abby just screaming her head off. But one that I want to recommend, a specific episode. It is a bittersweet thing that Abby's leaving Giant Bomb, but it's a great series and still want to recommend it to everybody. The episode, actually, I'll get the number here as well. It's 402, where they play the game Pacify, which is a co-op horror game where you have to essentially expel some spirits from houses or different areas. It's not like Phasmophobia entirely.
Phasmophobia.
Yeah, it's not entirely like that because there's no checklist or anything like this. It's a first-person co-op horror thriller based game. But that episode of it, like, even if you just watch the first 15 minutes, it's hilarious because they go through some stuff. They test out games enough to make sure it's not like a dumpster fire, but they don't play too much that they're not surprised when they go into it. Right. So they got to a point which they did not experience before, and it was hilarious how, like, Vinny is a father of 2 kids, but his, like, dad mode kicked in to protect Abby from a certain situation that was hilarious, and it just ended up being, like, it's the first time, like, Rachel and I have, like, started to cry laughing at a certain part. I was going to say I don't want to hype it up too much, but I totally am. But it's so fun. I used to not be into watching people's reactions to games and, like, stuff like that, but getting more into streaming, a lot of these series are pretty hilarious and pretty entertaining. So, but the whole series is called 6 Crazy Frights, but specifically episode 402, where they watch Pacify. I'll, of course, link it in the podcast description and everything. Cool. It's hilarious. If you have kids around, they definitely drop some F-bombs, so maybe don't watch with them if that's a concern. But it's a good time, and I wish that we could do stuff like this, that we had the time and could get paid to just play through co-op games and enjoy the hilarity that ensues. So yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I'd totally be up for something like that. But yeah. Wow, okay. That sounds really fun. So
it's a good time.
I don't know if I should ask any questions about it because I actually almost don't want to know any more. I don't really want to know any more because I want to go in blind almost. But yeah, I don't know what to ask actually.
Okay.
Chris, have you got any questions about that?
I don't know who Abby is. Where is she going?
They recently got acquired by another. There was a merger with Giant Bomb. They used to be under CBS Interactive, and they're so essentially you have the option to continue your contract. She decided not to, and more power to her because this is her first job out of college. Which also it's like fuck you. You don't know how fortunate you are, but no, but she's been great. I've mentioned Giant Bomb before, and the reason it's bittersweet is like she was not my favorite personality on there at first because it felt like she was not a gamer, but she was strong on the production side. But then, like, as much as I watched Giant Bomb, you know, Rachel would kind of sit there and sit through some stuff with me. But when Abby was on, she really liked Abby, and so Rachel's actually gotten interested into Giant Bomb due to Abby, and Abby's kind of warmed up to me as well. And then of course it figures because 2 weeks ago she announced she's leaving. But it's still like it's a fun like she was warmed up to her enough that like I said, babe, next time we go to like PAX, we're gonna go to PAX again sometime. We can meet Abby. She was excited about that, but
oh wow,
who knows? with
Well,
the state
maybe
of the world
she's
and all
gonna.
that crap.
Did she say what she's gonna be doing? Is she staying in gaming? Is it like completely different? Maybe she'll keep streaming.
I think she's gonna keep streaming her own stuff on Twitch because she's already kind of started doing her own side thing, which is sort of what Dan Reichert has done. He left Giant Bomb just before the quarantine happened, and he's been streaming a lot more.
Who's left?
Him and
I
Abby
don't,
get
I don't
streaming
know
some
even
stuff
know.
together. So
I know Jeff Gersman. That's pretty much it of Giant Bomb.
Yes,
who I know.
he will.
Is he still
Jeff
there?
Gersman's he's still there, of course, the founder of Giant Bomb. He's a lifer. Alex Navarro is still there. I think he'll be there forever. I think Vinny will be there forever, and also Brad Shoemaker. They're kind of the core staff on there now still because they were back with the GameSpot days and other stuff.
They were all the original guys, right? Because
Yes,
all those guys
yes.
said, I know their names. I don't know, like, other than the first guy, I don't know the other dudes. But it's cool that they're still doing it, though, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
they
are. Like, I forget how Giant Bomb entered my ether, but when I learned this might make me sound a little bit pretentious, but I don't give a shit. They kept making references to Mystery Science Theater, and so I was like, I think these are good people if they dig MST, so I'm going to keep listening to their podcast. and Jeff Gersman is honestly a fan of Sega, and he's like, they were one of the few groups out there that would talk about Sega in a higher regard than most people would in terms of console wars and things like that. So I think that's also why I kept up with them. But I mean, long story short, the whole reason that Giant Bomb exists is very interesting and admirable because it's literally a result of Jeff Gersman getting fired for a bad review on Kane and Lynch and then starting his own fucking company.
Oh, yes. And I remember that happening.
Oh, you've heard of him? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that whole event happening because wasn't the game studio who made Kane and Lynch, they were sponsoring the site or something, and he did a bad review. And it's like, you realise we've got all this advertising around your review about the game. You need to change it. Like, no, I'm not going to change it.
Really
it's
cool.
a terrible game.
It's really cool.
Wow. Okay,
it was just a matter of time before something like that happened. And it just so happened to be a very public site. IGN and everything else, or GameSpot, and because it was GameSpot, right? And they ended up. I don't remember the full story, but I just want to say I fully supported those guys when they went on to do their own thing, and it makes me happy that there's still Giant Bomb, even though they got acquired. I'm sure they made their money and they're doing well for themselves. Which, hey, if someone can sit there and I mean, these are like OG guys. These guys have been around for a long time. These aren't like YouTube or Twitch guys. No. These are dudes that have been writing and doing this stuff for a long time. So for those guys to catch out or even stay in, but just getting paid, I'm all for it because you don't get paid that much money, man. And so hopefully they did get a little chunk of that.
It's crazy. They've gone through a couple different ownership shifts and stuff, but it was announced recently, and they are, they have a good staff. They have a lot of strong people on there that are varied and come from different areas. But like the background is insane. Like how long a lot of them have been doing stuff. Like they have a thing on there now called Giant Bomb Infinite, which is after they hit their 10-year anniversary, they have a literal stream where you can choose what's next, but it just cycles through their whole video library of everything they've done. Really? And it was, I realized how long they've been doing this stuff when my buddy Lee linked to me a TV spot where Jeff Gersman was on a talk show hyping up the Dreamcast. And I was like, he looks like he's 19 and like, it's just crazy. So anyway, Giant Bomb is cool and check out 6 Crazy Frights.
Brilliant. I think I'm going to do that later this evening. That sounds really good. I'll go next. So I am going to do... I don't do this very often, but I am going to try and get everybody reading a book. I'll just bring up... Annoyingly, I don't have the physical version. I've got it on my Kindle. I'm just waking up my Kindle. Let's see if this works on camera. It's a book called The Final Empire. Don't know if anyone's ever heard of that. So It's by an American author called Brandon Sanderson, which his name is really faint on here. I don't think anyone can actually read that on the camera, but Brandon Sanderson. I've only read one other of his books before, which was called Elantris. and he does sort of fantasy sci-fi books, but they're more fantasy based. And just after reading 2 of his books now, he's possibly my favorite author of all time. I think he's bloody brilliant. He's so the Final Empire is part of a trilogy of books called the Mistborn trilogy. And there's also some other books set in the Mistborn world, but this is the start of a specific trilogy. And the overview of the book is essentially there is a world where an immortal rules over the world, and he's called the Lord Ruler. He's basically a god. And he controls pretty much everything. He controls all the politics and like the way the economic system and everything's set up. And the world is sort of split into 3 main classes beneath him. So there's his sort of ministry or his government, who are people with special powers, who kind of lay down the laws that he's dictated across the world. There's a class of noblemen who are basically these different great houses and smaller houses as well, who are basically rich people. So like the aristocracy from old England, sort of medieval times, they own land, they own sort of castles and keeps and stuff, and they beneath them, and some of them have powers as well. These noblemen have powers over this, like they're kind of like almost like a royal kind of bloodline. And people with that bloodline tend to have powers and abilities. And then you have these people called the Scar, who are servants or more often than not slaves. So some of them do get paid, but most of them don't. And they kind of work in fields and work in mines and things like that. And they're basically downtrodden. And some of them live in cities, some of them live on plantations and things like that. But essentially, it's all based around that sort of politics system and the special powers that certain people have, which come from different types of metal. So like things like steel and iron and stuff, people can actually eat bits of them, like digest them. And when they're inside their system, they can do what they call burning. So essentially they use that metal to be able to do certain abilities. But different people have different abilities, and only certain people can use certain types of metal. So
this guy was smoking some good shit.
Oh yeah. And each metal has a set ability. So for example, there's something called steel pushing. So if I eat a bit of steel and I'm a steel pusher, I can then push all metallic objects away from me. So I can pick up a coin and throw a coin, but I can make it fly really fast, really far. I can control it. But if I try to push like a tank, for example, which is way heavier than me, I would get pushed backwards because it's too heavy, if that makes sense. And there's different abilities like that, and they've all got like a positive.
Can you train yourself to get like stronger, or are you always at a limit? Like, is it just the mass? Like, is
it's
it
the
like
mass.
So there's no way a human will ever be able to do it, no matter how much training. You just physically can't like generate enough, like I guess, force.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to generate enough force or weight behind yourself, effectively.
So there is some sort of laws that are like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I couldn't just like push a tank or something. I'd be screwed with that. And there's some people
that dashes my hope of the Rocky montage of someone eventually being able to push a tank with their mind.
That'd be amazing. On the flip side of that, you've got like iron. People who can burn iron, they pull metal towards them. So I could pull myself towards the tank if I could do that. But if I like pull on like a door hinge or someone's earring, that would come towards me, if that makes sense. Because they'll pull, the small objects will be pulled to me, but I could be pulled towards larger objects. So it depends on how heavy something is or how well firmly it's held down.
It's like if Magneto was not as strong as he is.
Yes, kind of. Yeah, you can imagine that. But there's more different skills and stuff, and some of them are really cool. But the main purpose of the story actually is around a couple of Scar rebels who both have these abilities to burn different metals. So it's kind of about this. They sort of become part of this rebellion, and there's an uprising against all the politics and stuff. But it's really it's a really good book. So Brandon Sanderson, the thing I love about him and why he's soon become my favorite author, his language is quite simplistic, but it's very creative. So even though he doesn't like go into huge descriptions about things, you can instantly just view it in your head because the way he talks about stuff, and he's very creative. And it's within the first couple of pages, I was just hooked on this book. Same with Elantris, which is the other book I read of his. Elantris is a standalone book on its own. And after the end of Elantris, I was like, oh my God, I want more of this. Like, there needs to be more to this story. And then my friend told me, he's done loads of other books. Like, check out they said, check out the Mistborn trilogy. So it's been a few months, but I then eventually checked it out. I'm like, so glad I did. I've been doing it for the last month, basically. Such good books. I've actually already downloaded the second book in the trilogy. Going to start reading that, but highly recommend him. He's really good.
So Graham, you are usually the one that I think we convince to buy stuff. Most podcasts, it seems like most time there's not a podcast that finishes without Graham buying something that either me or Scotty or someone else convinced you to do. But I'll say this, Graham, you actually just convinced me to buy Mistborn on my Kindle reader. So I bought it and I'm going to start reading it.
Oh, is that the whole trilogy you've downloaded, or? I
just bought the first book.
Okay, the first book should be called The Final Empire.
It is.
Okay, good, cool.
It is.
Sorry, because I know he's got three. He's got 3 other books in the Mistborn world, so I didn't want you to accidentally download the wrong book. But I'm sure they're all amazing. So
yeah, I'm gonna just download. I think I'm just gonna buy the whole series anyway.
Sweet. So. Okay. My friend actually told
Mistborn
me
the Final Empire is what it's called, right? Mistborn the Final Empire.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
My friend actually told me the first book in the Mistborn trilogy is the worst, but still amazing. So she was like, they just get better. And I'm like, OMG. Yeah, that's happening. I can't believe you said OMG. I haven't said that ever.
The book studio.
Oh, yes. Yep. So that's it. Yeah.
I was going to, my only comment about that, it sounds cool. The metals, that sounds super reminiscent of the plasmids in the BioShock games.
How do they work? I remember using plasmids, but
yeah, I think they changed the name every freaking game or something. But in terms of they were literally these chemicals or things that you were ingesting or injecting into yourself to as a human, you could then control fire. You could then move things psychically. You could only interact with certain things, but had some sort of X-Men type mutant type powers like that. So it sounds similar to that. I don't know which came first. It's not like that's a brand new idea, but
Yeah, I guess actually it's kind of very similar. Yeah, and once you run out of the metal in your body, you kind of can't do the power until you ingest some more metal. Basically, that's the way it works in the Mistborn books.
That reminds me of a character.
Don't go around eating metal, kid.
Yeah,
just everyone at home, do not do this. It's a
your daily dose of iron is not by literally finding some golf clubs and chomping out a 5-iron. Don't do that.
Oh dear,
good stuff.
Yeah. So if there's no other questions on that, Chris von Frankenstein or Stein.
Frankenstein.
What is your pick of the week?
I'm going to go back to Night of the Demons just because I want to talk about it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Have you guys ever watched this or heard of it before?
Never even heard of it.
It sounds super generic, so that's not to say I shouldn't check it out because of the generic name, but no, is the short answer.
It is super generic. There's no reason why this particular night is of the demons. We've not figured out why this night in particular is that night, but no, it's I guess there's I think it's on Halloween. It happens on Halloween. There's a bunch of teenagers, like I said before. They go to it's actually an abandoned funeral parlor called the Hull House, and it's supposed to be built on this evil patch of land where there's this stream that goes underneath it. There's somehow something happens to where on Halloween, and it has something to do with the stream that runs under the house. Basically, demons can materialize. There's some portal that opens or something, and so these teens decide they're going to have this awesome party there. And they're not all friends; they're from different groups and stuff. So it's kind of each. You got all your stereotypical type of kids there. You got your big jock guy. His name's Stooge, played by this guy. He looks like if Rocksteady and Bebop were humans. That this is kind of probably what he'd look like, right? And all the characters
Seamus.
Well, I'm talking about the older ones, but the each character, they're almost done in all their mannerisms, their outfits and stuff. It's just done up to almost a cartoony point, and they're just all played up really crazy with their personalities and stuff. Linnea Quigley is in this movie, and she is one of the biggest scream queens from the 80s, probably. She's been in so much stuff. Return of the Living Dead, she was in, and she's been in just tons of stuff. Usually she's not very shy with removing garments. If you know what I mean.
Yep.
Oh,
I
okay.
know who that is now. I know who that is now.
Yeah. So, chances are you've probably seen Linnea Quigley. You don't know her name.
Chances are you've seen a lot of Linnea Quigley.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially I have no idea who this person is.
So this movie was originally released back in 1988. And it was directed by Kevin Tenney. It had a budget about $1.2 million, and it went on to gross a little over $3 million. So it was a somewhat of a commercial success. It didn't make a ton of money, but it did open, nationwide. This movie, I always wanted to watch it growing up because, like I said, I'd see it at the VHS store, and my mother would never let me rent it. I still remember the box art, like to this day. And we happened to do a podcast about it recently, and I ended up getting it. Now, Jamie, my wife, she loves watching scary movies with me, but the one thing she's not really into is like older horror movies, like especially stuff from like the 80s and 70s. She's not really into some of the older stuff, like some black and white.
Golden Age. What the heck?
Here's the reason why. She prefers movies that feel more realistic. So movies like Sinister or The Conjuring, something where she feels like it's somewhat grounded in reality and it's taken serious as it is actually happening, not like slapstick horror. She doesn't like gore horror. She's not a big so there's very specific kind of stuff that I know if I'm going to have Jamie watch, like I know she will either like this or it's probably not for her. And I knew going into this is Night of the Demons was not her movie. I was like, I know what she's into. She's not, but my brother and I started watching it last week to get ready for the show, and she ended up just didn't have anything to do, so she sat and watched it with us. She ended up loving the movie.
Oh, okay.
Which I was so surprised about. And I had to say, this movie, it's just so much fun to watch. It doesn't do anything crazy different. It's just like the gags are good. It's funny. It seems like all the characters just really had a lot of fun with it. And it's a really cool movie. I really suggest you guys to check it out if you've not done it. This is probably one of the movies, if I probably put like maybe 5 to 10 horror movies that I haven't watched, but I really need to. This is definitely one of the ones that was like on top of my list because I know how respected it is, and I know a lot of people really love it. And it's just one of those that for whatever reason I just never got to watching it when I was a kid. One little cool little tidbit is apparently it was actually referenced. The movie was referenced in an episode of Deadwood. I guess there's the convenience store. There's the VHS of the movie like sitting on one of the shelves in Deadwood, which takes place like in the late 1800s or whatever. So,
wow, okay,
VHS would have been really new back then.
Yeah.
So I have no idea who Linnea Quigley is, because I'm not hugely into horror movies like you guys are. I do enjoy some of them, but yeah, but I've just gone to her IMDb page. She has done so many movies, and they all appear to be horror themed movies. And I don't know if you know, she's still making them. She's got movies in pre-production, some going out in 2022 due for release, and then it's like 3 others afterwards. And three like a couple that just jumped out at me. Sorority Babes in the Slime Bowl O-Rama 2 and Terratoons 4. What? I've seen Terratoons, the original one. I didn't realize there was like sequels. Wow. Okay.
It's basically like if you've played a Duke Nukem game and you saw like Beach Babes in Brooklyn blowing up bombs or something, like some made up poster. She was in the movie that poster's making fun of.
Wow, I'm gonna have to watch some of this stuff.
She's great because she knows she's in schlocky stuff. You know what I mean? She's not a dumb person, but she just embraces it, man. She's made a name for herself. The people in the community love her. She seems like a sweetheart of a person. I've never met her or anything like that, but just in the interviews, the behind the scenes stuff I've seen of her, she just looks like someone who is probably awesome to have on set. and just a really fun person to be around. So,
and she's made a career. She's clearly made a career out of it. She was working since 1975 doing these movies. There's tons of movies in her list. It's amazing. So
I will tell you what, Graham. Check this movie out. I'm going to read that book that you suggested. You read Night of the Demon, or watch Night of the Demons, I should say, and I'll read that book.
Demons. I'm going to type it in. Night of the
I wonder, like, based on your description of the plot there, is there, aside from the horrible, I'm sorry, some people do dig the scary movies that are called Scary Movie. Is there a movie that makes fun of the fact that all the bullshit's happening on Halloween night? And I wonder if there's ever like a scene where like groups of teens are running into each other, like asking for help. And meanwhile, one of them's like, no, we got our own issue to deal with to prevent a different wormhole portal to hell. Sorry, gotta go.
The only thing that I remember, like, kind of similar, and it's not really, but Shaun of the Dead, there's that one funny scene where they go by the same group of people and they're just like doing the same thing. I thought that was great. That's just so funny that it calls into point exactly what you're saying though, Scotty. Like, yes, there is an apocalypse happening around you, but in this story we're only like following around these one group of people. But mind you, there's all of this other crazy stuff happening around you. It's just
it's actually it doesn't really address it, but it kind of goes with that theme. If you guys have ever seen the movie Trick or Treat, it sort of takes that idea, but not to a hilarity standpoint. We just recently watched that. It's cool as a new monster, sort of in that monster universe type thing. Trick or Treat kind of has that idea.
I think that sounds fun. You guys would like, Scotty. I know, your girlfriend. You guys watch horror stuff. I think this is definitely something right up your alley. I think you guys are going to like it. I'm more interested to see what Graham. Because I don't know if like how much you are into this type of stuff, Graham. I would be interested in seeing like whether you like it or not.
Okay, I'm interested to find out myself as well, to be honest. Because there's certain horror genres and movies I do enjoy. I have to admit, I haven't seen many of the big ones. Like I've seen Halloween, as in the new Halloween, and I've seen Halloween H2O, but those are the Halloween movies I've seen. So, for example,
it's
for like
horror
movies. So like for these schlocky horror movies, I've seen I've seen I've forgotten the name of it. The Terratoons. I've seen the original Terratoons. I've seen a couple of other movies a bit like that. But I'm interested. I'll give this a shot for sure.
It's a hard genre as much as like sci-fi is to keep up with, because there's so many subgenres to know what you're like. Because there's some horror movies that I will like not bother with, because it's just like I don't need torture porn, but I like other stuff. So it's
like
it's
I love the original Saw movie because I thought it was quite psychological, and I think I enjoyed the second Saw movie, and then I think it's either the third or fourth Saw movie. There's a bit at the start where someone's got to get a key out of some acid to unlock this thing that's strapped to them, and when they finally do, they can't unlock it because the key's melted down too much, and then it just rips them apart. And I was like, somebody had to think this up, and I was like, this is a bit too far for me. I was just like, I'm not enjoying this right now. This is not my kind of horror. I don't know.
I don't enjoy like torture stuff, and like I wasn't a fan of the Hostel stuff. I like
not at all.
I like lots of different genres, but that's not one that I'm big on personally. Like I like that stuff in certain instances, like gore in horror is fine when done right. But I prefer like build up the suspense and and that sort of thing, traditional type stuff.
I'm the same. I don't mind a little bit of gore or even just a tiny bit of torture, as it were, in a movie. But I'm not like into ones that are like full on gore, full on torture throughout the whole movie. I'm like, kind of, this isn't my thing really.
I'm always also a fan of.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that like the last like aspect of horror and stuff is sometimes I like it better when they don't show stuff and they really let the audience's imagination go crazy. Like that's what like Alfred Hitchcock was known for, that stuff in some of his movies, even because of budget, but like that actually makes it sometimes scarier because it just lets you decide what's going on.
Well, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you go back and watch it, there's really not any kills that happen on screen. It's all off-screen stuff. And so there's really nothing that you see and that was all because they're trying to get through like censors and stuff, and they're trying to get a certain rating.
vaguely remember there's at least one pretty bad murder when doesn't want some. Just not really spoiling because it's like a 40-year-old movie. But some guy, when they're going into the house, he opens the kitchen and then, like, I think Leatherface then he just smashes his head in with a hammer straight away.
Well, a lot of the times it actually doesn't show it. The violence. It cuts away.
Yeah.
It cuts away.
It'll split right before the contact of it.
There's
I'd have to watch it again.
Him grabbing a girl and like my son's in here.
Putting on
there's
the
other
spike.
scenes of violence. Yes,
I know that
scene. You see it in your mind, but if you actually go back and watch it, it does not actually show the spike going in or anything else. It shows him about to do it. It cuts away, and I think maybe a shadow, and then you see her body there, but you don't actually see it. So that was like their way of getting around, anything beyond like an R rating or anything like that. It's just putting that part out, and they're able to get through some censor stuff.
Yeah, which I think, in some ways that works better. And I like.
But to your point, Scotty, I think that stuff. Yeah, I agree. Like when you do that, you leave it a little open to the imagination, and sometimes that's way scarier.
Yeah, like with the original Jaws. I found it terrifying as a child. But I watched a documentary about it, and they couldn't get the shark to work properly. So for the first half of the movie, you never see it. You just see the fin occasionally, but you never see the proper actual mechanical shark. And they said it worked out way better. They're like, it's just so much more terrifying. They've got that music there. This kind of builds up the suspense, and then like people get dragged under and stuff. You're like, what? It's under the water. Holy crap. Oh my God. Something massive must be there. So it's kind of really draws you in. And I love that sort of stuff. Wow. Yeah, that's exciting. I love it. Does anyone have any other questions for Chris? Scotty, do you have any more questions about Night of the Demons at all?
No, I'm still digging through the ditches and burning through the witches.
There is some weird stuff that happens in this movie, though. I'm not going to say it. There's just random weird stuff that happens, and it's never explained. The best thing to do is just don't even question it. Just accept that it happened and just keep going. I guarantee you, it'll make it way easier for you. Just go on with your life. Just that one bit there. That's just one piece of advice.
Okay, well, I will try and watch it the next week, and I will try and get back to you and let you know how it went, and if those bits annoyed me. But with that, we will put our picks of the week to bed, and we will quickly move on to our feature discussion.
He's a ghost.